Greetings, ladies, gentlemen, and others. This is Jolly Scholar 888. Welcome to my Blockchain to Metaverse series. Discussion number 3, A Brief History of Bitcoin. This series is brought to you by the technoanarchist.com and Aurora Bright Bikes. I subtitled this discussion Blockchain, Bitcoin, and Decentralization, the opening salvo against the globalist banking system. Yes, I know it's another bombastic heading of mine, but you might find yourself agreeing with me before it's over. I will argue that with Bitcoin, the opening salvo against the current global banking system began in earnest, and with that, the inevitable march of techno-anarchism towards the decentralization of power itself, what I am calling the Great Reversal. And what is this Great Reversal a reversal of? It is a reversal of at least 4,000 years of hierarchical evolution towards greater and greater centralization of power into the hands of fewer and fewer people. A trend that was accelerated by the 1917 Communist Revolution and that continues to this day with the merging of Communist China, the European Union, and the global financial system rooted in fiat currencies, and promoted here in the U.S. by big tech and the media under the smokescreen of progressive liberalism. It is today called global socialism, and it is global fascism, because all socialism manifests as fascism. It was always intended to be so. That's why it always has. China is not a failed communist state. It is a successful national socialist state. The Cultural Revolution was just a made-up term for the biological and social re-engineering of an entire population, directed by the tiniest possible minority, far less than 1%. Where do you think our socialist elites got that term? It's a projection for what they know only too well is exactly what they intend to implement, a far less than 1% elite with absolute power. A population cannot possibly be re-engineered by consensus. The project can only be attempted by a tiny minority with absolute power. This is the very definition of all socialism. Socialism is a large-scale engineering project. Communist China is a national socialist or Nazi state. I know that might upset some of you to hear, but you must face the truth or be perpetually victimized by it. You need to accept the fact that all socialism is fascist, and you cannot hide behind the smokescreen of progressive liberalism any longer. Be thankful that socialism often fails, because when it succeeds, you get China or Cuba. But I digress. I will continue to argue that the Great Reversal actually began with the 1776 American Revolution and is now being accelerated through the new technologies, starting with Bitcoin. And it is important to keep in mind that the American Revolution, unlike the Communist Revolution, was not ideologically driven. The Constitution is a codified blueprint for how to implement and maintain governmental structures designed to resist the concentration of power. It is American pragmatism, not ideology. There is no ideological template behind the Constitution. However, starting with the Declaration of Independence, it is also clear that the Constitution and the Revolution itself were informed by Christian values and Enlightenment ethics. Another subject I have addressed in the past, and I'll continue to do so. But like our Constitution, which is a structural blueprint for the limitation of government power, blockchain technology also has no ideological content, not even a concept of techno-anarchism, no ideological objective coded into its processes. Having said that, nonetheless, blockchain technology was devised as a tool towards decentralizing the financial system, for taking the system out of the hands of the concentrated few and giving access to the system to whoever desires to engage with it. It is a technological tool that can be used to further individual freedom and autonomy. It attempts to accomplish with technology what the American Constitution was designed to do with governmental restructuring. But lest you think I'm reading into the motivations of the people behind the emergence of Bitcoin, I'll let them speak for themselves. So let's proceed with this brief historical presentation. We begin with, on January 3rd, 2009, the Bitcoin network, a network of peer-to-peer computers, was created when an unknown at the time, person or persons, who operated under the name of Satoshi Nakamoto, mined the starting block of the chain known as the Genesis block. Embedded in the Coinbase of this block, and I already explained what a Coinbase is in the previous video, was the text, Quote, The Times, 03/Jan/2009. Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks, unquote. This note references a headline published by the Times and has been interpreted as both a timestamp for the block and a comment on the instability caused by fractional reserve banking. This little note, this small addition to the Genesis block of the Bitcoin blockchain, let the world know, in my opinion, that from its inception, Bitcoin was a deliberate blow against the financial empire. Bitcoin came into being with a purpose, and that purpose is now coming to fruition. And of course, the reaction to it by the empire, global socialism, is also rapidly and desperately manifesting. And I think you might have an idea about what empire I'm referring to. The receiver of the first Bitcoin transaction was a fellow named Hal Finney, who had created the first reusable proof-of-work system in 2004. Now, we've already discussed proof of work. It's why I presented the video on Bitcoin mechanics before this brief history. So you would already be familiar with the basic terms and have some idea of how a blockchain works. Finney was part of a group of people, a small movement called cypherpunks. That's CYPHERPUNK. It consisted of cryptographers and computer programmers. His involvement was not at all at first related to the yet-to-be-created Bitcoin. Here is a comment he made regarding another cryptographer named David Chaum. Quote, It seems so obvious to me. Here we are faced with the problems of loss of privacy, creeping computerization, massive databases, more centralization. And David Chaum offers a completely different direction to go in, one which puts power into the hands of individuals rather than governments and corporations. The computer can be used as a tool to liberate and protect people rather than to control them. Now, the person Finney was referring to is David Chaum, a creator of cryptography protocols. His most famous invention is DigiCash. His paper, Untraceable Electronic Mail, Return Addresses, and Digital Pseudonyms, written in 1981, laid the foundation for anonymous communications research. David received his PhD in computer science and business administration from the University of California, Berkeley in 1982. In the same year, he founded the International Association for Cryptologic Research and formed a cryptography research group at the National Institute of Mathematics and Computer Science in Amsterdam. In 1990, he founded the company DigiCash, and in 1995, he was awarded the European Information Technology Prize. In 2004, Chaum was appointed as a researcher of the International Cryptography Research Association, and in 2010, he won the RSA Conference Award for Excellence in Mathematics. He is still very active. I have a link below to an article that came out this past January. In this article, Chaum makes clear his hopes for what blockchain technology, Web 3.0, and the Metaverse can accomplish towards the decentralization of the financial system. He is also very aware of the battles ahead that will have to be waged against big tech and government regulations. But he seems to think we can win in the end. The interview is extremely insightful, and I highly recommend you read it. David Chaum, 40 years later, is still on the cutting edge. In 1998, Wei Dai helped to spark interest in cryptocurrencies with the publication of B-Money, an anonymous distributed electronic cash system. In this paper, Dai outlines the basic properties of all modern-day cryptocurrency systems. A scheme for a group of untraceable digital pseudonyms to pay each other with money and to enforce contracts amongst themselves without outside help. Without outside help is what is now referred to as trustless and decentralized, which includes no government interference, no regulation, no manipulation by the banks. B-Money was described as, quote, money which is impossible to regulate, unquote. Dai's B-Money described the core concepts later implemented in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Number one, requires a specified amount of computational work, aka proof of work. The work done is verified by the community who update a collective ledger book. Those of you who watched my last video know exactly what I mean. A bank is basically a ledger. More complicated ledger system, but it's a ledger system nonetheless. The worker is awarded funds for their effort. This is the proof of work concept, which we described also in the last video. Exchange of funds is accomplished by collective bookkeeping and authenticated with cryptographic hashes. And this should also make perfect sense to you if you saw the last video. However, B-Money was never actually launched and remained an idea. Also in 1998, another fellow named Nick Szabo designed a mechanism for a decentralized digital currency he called BitGold. BitGold was never implemented either, but has been called, quote, a direct precursor to the Bitcoin architecture, unquote. In May 2011 article, Szabo noted that myself, Y. Day, and Hal Finney were the only people I know of who liked the idea, or in Day's case, his related idea, enough to pursue it to any significant extent until Nakamoto. So let's stop and briefly consider some key quotes and items from these crypto pioneers. Number one, the computer can be used as a tool to liberate and protect people rather than to control them. That was Hal Finney. He's the pioneer with the cypherpunk groups. Number two, DigiCash, untraceable electronic mail, return addresses, and digital pseudonyms. That's David Schoen. Obviously, he's more in the anonymous tradition. Number three, B-Money, money which is impossible to regulate. That's Y. Day. Read that as manipulate. This is DeFi. This is techno-anarchism. This is decentralized finance. To regulate equals to manipulate. Governments and banks print money precisely so they can regulate it. Now, that's me, but I'm commenting on this quote, money which is impossible to regulate. Number four, exchange of funds is accomplished by collective bookkeeping by the community. Again, Y. Day. If you participate in the system, you own part of it. This is exactly what Bitcoin is doing. The sentiments and objectives of these early innovators seems obvious to me. Now, in 2010, the first known commercial transaction using Bitcoin occurred when programmer Laszlo Hanyecz bought 2 Papa John pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin. Yikes. Well, you do the math. 10,000 times 45 or 40,000. He claims he has no regrets. And anyways, it's a great story to tell your grandchildren, right? Blockchain analysts estimate that Nakamoto had mined about 1 million Bitcoins before disappearing in 2010 when he handed the network alert key and control of the code repository over to Gavin Andresen. Andresen later became lead developer at the Bitcoin Foundation. Andresen then sought to decentralize control. This left opportunity for controversy over the future developmental path of Bitcoin, in contrast to the perceived authority of Nakamoto's contributions. Now, interestingly, between 2011 and 2012, after early proof of concept transactions, the first major users of Bitcoin were black markets, such as Silk Road. During its 30 months of existence, beginning in February 2011, Silk Road exclusively accepted Bitcoin as payments, transacting 9.9 million in Bitcoins, worth about $214 million. It's provocative to consider the role that contraband and the erotic have played in human innovation. Well, think of Adam and Eve. Or porn in the early Web 2 development. And yes, the eroticizing of crypto has already begun. And we'll be covering that too. I'm working on a discussion called Crypto and the Erotic. I mean, really, how could I resist? And it's food for thought. But what was Satoshi Nakamoto? This is still a key question that has to be answered if we are to assume that Bitcoin itself was created as an instrument of resistance against global socialism, as opposed to some kind of Trojan horse created by the globalists to further their objectives. There's been quite a lot of speculation as to the identity of Nakamoto since the early 1980s, as you can see from this picture up here. The international criminal, I believe that's the fellow that founded BitTorrent and then bought a big mansion in New Zealand, and I think there was a SWAT team, helicopters came to arrest him one day. Of course, crypto genius, that's Szabo, some university professor, I don't know. But anyways, there was a lot of speculation. The Bogdanov twins, Google them. They were a real riot, both of them. This fellow, Craig Wright, has claimed since around 2015 that he is Satoshi Nakamoto. Recently, he was involved in a lawsuit with a former business partner, and this brought him back into public attention. Some say his claims are pretty substantial, but most people in the crypto world say he's a scam. So as of now, no one, or at least not the public, knows who Satoshi Nakamoto is. But how relevant is this to our question? Is Bitcoin and crypto in general a Trojan horse developed by the globalists to replace paper fiat with a new worldwide centralized digital fiat currency. I will have a lot to say about fiat currency in discussion number 4, Bitcoin implications. But for the moment, I think it is fair to say that for us, and I think everyone in the crypto space, the thought of a world centralized fiat cryptocurrency is a declaration of war. But is it possible that Bitcoin is a stealth maneuver, a Trojan horse that we in the crypto space are unwittingly participating in? Besides the reasons that I'm going to present here, my gut reaction says no. Too many brilliant people were and still are involved in the development of blockchain technologies for this to have escaped them, and the way crypto unfolded, in my opinion, makes this argument untenable. Nonetheless, it's possible. So first of all, in making my argument, let's look at the emergence of the Web 2 technologies. With Web 2.0, big tech, the universities, and the government were all involved together from the start. You might recall that the Pentagon played a huge role in the development of the internet in order to create a communication system that could not be taken out by any specific targeted strikes, a decentralized communication system. In fact, it could be argued that big tech is the product of the collaboration of big government and the university system. That would explain the overt political fascism rampant in the big tech companies. But we all naively believe that the people driving the new technologies were cutting-edge, brilliant entrepreneurs who were busy developing cutting-edge, brilliant new technologies. And in many ways they were. Most of us in general liked Google, Facebook, and Amazon. I ordered countless books on Amazon, and although I was never that fond of Facebook, I didn't suspect them of anything nefarious. And I didn't suspect Google either, whose products I always preferred and still use. Yes, what we do for ease of living, for convenience. Ease of living, that subject will resurface again in this series, so I'll leave it there for now. But there is a book by George Gilder that made an impact on me. It's called Life After Google. For those of you who haven't read it, it's very provocative and also very revealing. These companies are not nearly as powerful as we give them credit for, and they're in for a big fall. So the universities, the government, and the companies they spawned were clearly ahead of the small business entrepreneurs. But their fascist tendencies were not apparent to the public. It was Trump, the Trump phenomena, that blew big tech's cover for all to see. He blew their ugly machinations wide open, and there is no one seeing it now, and no turning back. The war is on. The technology giants have embraced global socialism to include China. And is it really such a surprise? Where did all the CEOs and the young programmers come from? Our universities. Where else? And by the way, a few years back, when I was still in academia, I saw the emergence of China and their influence in the universities right away. It was very apparent. But in the case of blockchain development, and to a lesser extent virtual reality in the metaverse, even Web 3.0, the large technology monopolies are actually behind the curve and now desperately trying to catch up. Zuckerberg's Meta is too little, too late, and failing. Blockchain metaverse social media and alternative online social media sites are proliferating and doing very well. Google is becoming less and less relevant. And the main reason I am convinced that Bitcoin could not have been a Trojan horse project is that the tech giants did not anticipate blockchain technology at all. It's obvious. They are so far behind that many big companies need to now publicly advertise for blockchain developers, and they're having trouble recruiting them. Nonetheless, some disturbing developments have been emerging within the crypto space over the past few years, and I'll be covering that in my Crypto Wars discussion. So yes, the war is on, but our adversaries are definitely behind, not ahead of us. It is they who will have to catch up to us, not the other way around like it was with the Web 2.0 and the social media wars. So to me, this is all very strong evidence that in no way was crypto developed as a stealth maneuver by the financial globalists. I am convinced that blockchain took even the tech giants by surprise. But there is another critical component to my argument, one that has not been paid enough attention to. And this development was totally unexpected by everyone, even the blockchain and crypto communities. I'm referring to the emergence of the NFT, the non-fungible token. The NFT is fundamentally changing the way we financially and socially interact at seemingly every level of exchange. And what is the fundamental value? Ownership. Blockchain first introduced ownership via the Bitcoin blockchain bank. As I pointed out repeatedly, To own a Bitcoin is to have a direct ownership in the financial system you are participating in. This in itself is revolutionary and utterly contrary to globalist ideology. NFTs are extending individual ownership to every aspect of our lives, from art to gaming and sports to real estate. The individual can own parts of every economic sector they engage in. Again, absolutely contrary to all globalist objectives. There's no way the globalists anticipated this, much less engineered it, even by accident. Not even the crypto community anticipated this. Yet nonetheless, the NFT is a direct derivative of blockchain technology. Eliminating private ownership has always been a central objective in the global Marxist march through our institutions. And now NFT technology is proving to be a giant thorn up the globalist ass. Our founding fathers understood the critical role that private property must play in a free society. If you own nothing, you are nothing. You don't even own yourself. I spent a bit more time on NFTs in my introductory discussion that at the time might not have seemed warranted. But this is why. As I've been pointing out, NFTs are proving to be the stealth surprise of the 21st century. But it did not come from the globalists. It arose from within the crypto space, a direct, unexpected derivative of the blockchain technologies. And blockchain itself took big tech and the globalists by surprise. Furthermore, let's not forget the gaming culture wars, the woke wars, that have been raging for years in the massive global gaming community. With the advent of in-game NFTs and blockchain gaming, it looks like the tide is turning in favor of individual freedom, non-censorship, and creative entrepreneurialism. The university stupefied youth are being pulled away from the stranglehold. Gaming, I will argue, is another of the great surprises of the 21st century. I'll be exploring how I think NFTs, gaming, and the Metaverse are creating an unexpected nexus of resistance to the globalist project. So here I rest my case. I understand it's not conclusive, but I, at any rate, have no doubts that Bitcoin and blockchain technologies are not any kind of Trojan horse created by the globalists. But will the globalists attempt to appropriate it? Of course they will. And that's why the crypto wars are on. So what is the takeaway from this short historical inquiry? I think that what it clearly demonstrates, at least to me, is that the crypto phenomenon came into being as a revolutionary act against the global financial system, and not, as some have suggested, a stealth tool for further globalized control of the world's financial system. But you can make up your own mind as we continue with this series and conduct your own investigation. And I would reiterate, blockchain technology is a further manifestation of the great American experiment that began with the revolution of 1776, a reversal of thousands of years of increasing hierarchical human social evolution. Blockchain is accelerating that reversal. And it was the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution that brought into existence the very pinnacle of concentrated hierarchical power. And that trend continues today as global fascism, incubated in the universities and now facilitated by big tech and the rise of the Chinese National Socialist, read Nazi, Party. So again, at the risk of being very redundant, I am arguing that blockchain and related technologies are accelerating what I am calling techno-anarchism and the Great Reversal, an acceleration of what was first stated to the world in our Declaration of Independence. Math and science-driven pragmatism versus language and propaganda-driven ideology. And make no mistake, these two movements are in headlong collision. We are in the midst of what many are calling the crypto wars, the attempt by the globalists to appropriate and centralize blockchain technology. So in the next discussion of this Bitcoin to Metaverse series, we'll look a little deeper into the implications of Bitcoin in relation to the current global financial system. What has Bitcoin accomplished? What are its limitations? Can Bitcoin and the Bitcoin blockchain replace Fiat on a global scale? If not, what are the alternatives? So stay tuned for discussion number 4, implications of the Bitcoin phenomenon, followed by discussion number 5, the altcoin explosion, then NFTs, the Metaverse, crypto and the erotic, and finally the series will end with a discussion on the crypto wars. And by the way, did I mention hashtag defund the universities? That's the sewer that feeds the globalist swamp.